proclamation by the Governor General. Whereas by proclamation dated the 24th day of November 2016, issued under subsection 1 of section 52 of the Constitution of Grenada, Parliament was prorogued on the 30th day of November 2016. And whereas it is provided by subsection 1 of section 51 of the Constitution of Grenada that each session of Parliament shall be held at such place within Grenada and shall commence at such time as the Governor General may by proclamation appoint. And whereas it is further provided by subsection 2 of section 51 of the Constitution of Grenada that there shall be a session of Parliament once at least every year, so that a period of 6 months shall not intervene between the last sitting of Parliament in one session and the first sitting in the next session. Now, therefore, I, Cecile Lagrenade, Dame Grand Cross of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George, Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, Governor General in and over Grenada, do hereby appoint the Trade Center at Montrouge in the parish of St. George as the place where the 5th session of the 9th Parliament shall be held at 10 o'clock in the forenoon on Friday, the 2nd day of December 2016, as the time at which the said session shall begin. And members of the said Parliament and all other Her Majesty's officers and loving subjects in Grenada and all others whom it may concern are hereby required to take due notice hereof and give their ready obedience accordingly. Given under my hand and the public seal of Grenada this 20th day of November 2016 in the 65th year of the reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. God save the Queen.
Members of the Honorable Houses, please join me as we pray. Guide, we beseech thee, Almighty God, members of both houses, that they may wisely deliberate for the good of this country and for the glory of thy holy name. Amen. Please join with me as we say together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Pray, be seated.
Honorable members of both houses, I would wish you to stand for a moment of silence as a mark of respect of our solidarity and condolences on occasion of the passing of the leader of the Cuban Revolution, former President of the Republic of Cuba, Fidel Castro Ruz. Please stand. Honorable members, pray be seated. Honorable members, is it your wish that the Houses do now adjourn during pleasure to await the arrival of Her Excellency the Governor General? All those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it. This House now stands adjourned.
Good morning, Your Excellency. I'm Assistant Superintendent of Police, Sylvan McIntyre, reporting the Guards for the 5th session of the 9th Parliament. They are formed in order, at the order, awaiting the pleasure of your inspection. Your Excellency, can you please inspect the Guards?
Bow. Pray be seated. Thank you, Prime Minister. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, our nation embarks on this fifth session of the 9th Parliament with a renewed sense of pride in its achievements. We are indeed a blessed and resilient nation. Only a week ago, our people participated in a referendum exercise designed to amend our Constitution after 40 years. My government appreciates that constitution reform is a process and is therefore heartened to have facilitated the referendum process. My government therefore would like to sincerely thank the people of this beautiful nation for their love of country. We also commend the Constitutional Reform Advisory Committee under the astute leadership of Dr. Francis Alexis, who valiantly answered the patriotic call to put country first. Today, we are closer to constitutional reform than we have ever been. My government will continue to ensure that constitutional reform is on the national agenda. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the top priorities of my government for this session of Parliament will be the following: building on the strong foundation of the recent past by investing better and smarter to achieve strong, sustainable, and inclusive growth, creating jobs and investment opportunities for our people, and strengthening national unity. Building on our successes. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, our economy is in a much stronger position than it was 4 years ago, thanks to the sacrifices and resilience of our people and the support of our developmental partners. We have made significant strides in restoring macroeconomic stability and putting Grenada back on its feet. Economic growth has rebounded strongly since 2014, and our fiscal and debt situations have improved significantly. Unemployment has fallen, and inflation has been relatively low. We have also built a durable and fortified fiscal framework to ensure fiscal discipline going forward, and have undertaken significant reforms to strengthen our economic fundamentals to promote higher economic growth and employment creation. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the final review of the homegrown program will be completed next year. Mindful of the calls made, in particular by the social partners, to ensure that the gains of the homegrown program are protected and sustained, my government has involved this committee in a comprehensive assessment of the program in order to receive feedback on what areas should be maintained, tweaked, or removed altogether. This is a clear demonstration of my Bow. Pray be seated. Thank you, Prime Minister. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, our nation embarks on this fifth session of the 9th Parliament with a renewed sense of pride in its achievements. We are indeed a blessed and resilient nation. Only a week ago, our people participated in a referendum exercise designed to amend our Constitution after 40 years. My government appreciates that constitution reform is a process and is therefore heartened to have facilitated the referendum process. My government therefore would like to sincerely thank the people of this beautiful nation for their love of country. We also commend the Constitutional Reform Advisory Committee under the astute leadership of Dr. Francis Alexis, who valiantly answered the patriotic call to put country first. Today, we are closer to constitutional reform than we have ever been. My government will continue to ensure that constitutional reform is on the national agenda. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the top priorities of my government for this session of Parliament will be the following: building on the strong foundation of the recent past by investing better and smarter to achieve strong, sustainable, and inclusive growth, creating jobs and investment opportunities for our people, and strengthening national unity. Building on our successes. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, our economy is in a much stronger position than it was 4 years ago, thanks to the sacrifices and resilience of our people and the support of our developmental partners. We have made significant strides in restoring macroeconomic stability and putting Grenada back on its feet. Economic growth has rebounded strongly since 2014, and our fiscal and debt situations have improved significantly. Unemployment has fallen, and inflation has been relatively low. We have also built a durable and fortified fiscal framework to ensure fiscal discipline going forward, and have undertaken significant reforms to strengthen our economic fundamentals to promote higher economic growth and employment creation. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the final review of the homegrown program will be completed next year. Mindful of the calls made, in particular by the social partners, to ensure that the gains of the homegrown program are protected and sustained, my government has involved this committee in a comprehensive assessment of the program in order to receive feedback on what areas should be maintained, tweaked, or removed altogether. This is a clear demonstration of my Bow. Pray be seated. Thank you, Prime Minister. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, our nation embarks on this fifth session of the 9th Parliament with a renewed sense of pride in its achievements. We are indeed a blessed and resilient nation. Only a week ago, our people participated in a referendum exercise designed to amend our Constitution after 40 years. My government appreciates that constitution reform is a process and is therefore heartened to have facilitated the referendum process. My government therefore would like to sincerely thank the people of this beautiful nation for their love of country. We also commend the Constitutional Reform Advisory Committee under the astute leadership of Dr. Francis Alexis, who valiantly answered the patriotic call to put country first. Today, we are closer to constitutional reform than we have ever been. My government will continue to ensure that constitutional reform is on the national agenda. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the top priorities of my government for this session of Parliament will be the following: building on the strong foundation of the recent past by investing better and smarter to achieve strong, sustainable, and inclusive growth, creating jobs and investment opportunities for our people, and strengthening national unity. Building on our successes. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, our economy is in a much stronger position than it was 4 years ago, thanks to the sacrifices and resilience of our people and the support of our developmental partners. We have made significant strides in restoring macroeconomic stability and putting Grenada back on its feet. Economic growth has rebounded strongly since 2014, and our fiscal and debt situations have improved significantly. Unemployment has fallen, and inflation has been relatively low. We have also built a durable and fortified fiscal framework to ensure fiscal discipline going forward, and have undertaken significant reforms to strengthen our economic fundamentals to promote higher economic growth and employment creation. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the final review of the homegrown program will be completed next year. Mindful of the calls made, in particular by the social partners, to ensure that the gains of the homegrown program are protected and sustained, my government has involved this committee in a comprehensive assessment of the program in order to receive feedback on what areas should be maintained, tweaked, or removed altogether. This is a clear demonstration of my Bow. Pray be seated. Thank you, Prime Minister. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, our nation embarks on this fifth session of the 9th Parliament with a renewed sense of pride in its achievements. We are indeed a blessed and resilient nation. Only a week ago, our people participated in a referendum exercise designed to amend our Constitution after 40 years. My government appreciates that constitution reform is a process and is therefore heartened to have facilitated the referendum process. My government therefore would like to sincerely thank the people of this beautiful nation for their love of country. We also commend the Constitutional Reform Advisory Committee under the astute leadership of Dr. Francis Alexis, who valiantly answered the patriotic call to put country first. Today, we are closer to constitutional reform than we have ever been. My government will continue to ensure that constitutional reform is on the national agenda. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the top priorities of my government for this session of Parliament will be the following: building on the strong foundation of the recent past by investing better and smarter to achieve strong, sustainable, and inclusive growth, creating jobs and investment opportunities for our people, and strengthening national unity. Building on our successes. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, our economy is in a much stronger position than it was 4 years ago, thanks to the sacrifices and resilience of our people and the support of our developmental partners. We have made significant strides in restoring macroeconomic stability and putting Grenada back on its feet. Economic growth has rebounded strongly since 2014, and our fiscal and debt situations have improved significantly. Unemployment has fallen, and inflation has been relatively low. We have also built a durable and fortified fiscal framework to ensure fiscal discipline going forward, and have undertaken significant reforms to strengthen our economic fundamentals to promote higher economic growth and employment creation. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the final review of the homegrown program will be completed next year. Mindful of the calls made, in particular by the social partners, to ensure that the gains of the homegrown program are protected and sustained, my government has involved this committee in a comprehensive assessment of the program in order to receive feedback on what areas should be maintained, tweaked, or removed altogether. This is a clear demonstration of my government's willingness to strengthen national unity on matters of national importance. Notwithstanding the progress made in just 3 years, the job remains to be completed. Significant challenges persist. While the unemployment rate has fallen and many new jobs have been created, the number of persons who are unemployed remains stubbornly high and unacceptably high. Youth employment is of particular concern and must receive focused attention in this new session of Parliament. Our nation must continue to be resolute in bringing more and more tangible benefits to our people. Consistent with the foregoing imperatives, my government will present the 2017 budget on December the 9th, 2016, which will focus on working together with all sectors to build on our successes for a better country for ourselves and future generations. Investing in our people. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, investing in our people lies at the heart of our goals for economic prosperity going forward. For this reason, my government remains committed to building a creative and productive society. It is my government's intention, therefore, to continue to invest heavily in education. For 2017, the key focus areas are schools infrastructure, with funding assistance from the Caribbean Development Bank and other agencies, continued infusion of ICT within the school system, increased certification in technical and vocational skills, and capacity building for schools professionals. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the health of our nation is the wealth of our nation. My government holds firmly to this philosophy. So far, significant investments have been made in addressing the fundamental problems in our healthcare system. My government will continue to invest heavily in improving healthcare delivery in our country. A major focus will be on preventative healthcare with the aim of curbing the increase in chronic, non-communicable diseases such as hypertension and diabetes. Investment in health infrastructure with a strong focus on climate resilience will also be a priority. The completion of phase 2 of the General Hospital project and the commencement of construction of the Guave Health Center are two main interventions for next year. Recognizing the need to provide quality healthcare services to all citizens, regardless of their economic situation, my government remains committed to finding alternative means of financing healthcare through a national health insurance program. We are aware that we have not pursued this as aggressively as we would have liked, and therefore have taken steps to give it renewed focus by strengthening the logistics, leadership, and capacity in order to move the process forward. Currently, there is an advisory committee that continues to engage key stakeholders in a widespread consultative process to explore options for implementation. Honorable Emmeline Peer, Minister for Implementation, has been asked to spearhead this process. My government plans to fully roll out the National Health Insurance Plan by the middle of 2017. Investing better for sustainable and job-rich growth. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, it is imperative that we invest better and smarter to achieve a higher level of economic growth that is sustainable and job-rich, with more and more benefits accruing to our citizens. Critical to achieving high, sustainable, and job-rich growth is the whole issue of competitiveness. Accordingly, my government will continue to implement reforms to boost the competitiveness of the Grenadian economy. Specifically, our efforts to reform the electricity sector, lower energy prices, and transition towards renewable energy will be sustained. The high oil prices during the period 2007 to 2008 and its negative impact on consumers are still fresh in our minds. The new Electricity Supply and the Public Utilities Regulatory Commissions Act have already been passed in Parliament, and the new framework is expected to be fully operational by January 2017. We cannot engage in a serious discussion about sustainable development without fundamentally addressing the high cost of energy and energy security in our country. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government will continue to work towards addressing existing deficiencies to improve Grenada's ease of doing business. Several major steps have already been taken. My government has passed in Parliament a new Physical Planning and Development Control Act for the introduction of new regulations for the development of the construction sector. This will contribute significantly to building our resilience to natural disasters. We will soon implement the single window module, license module, of the ASICUDA world system. This will simplify and automate certain customs procedures to enhance trade facilitation. We will soon implement We now have in place a Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act which brings Grenada in line with a modern insolvency regime. Most importantly, it provides a legal framework for restructuring of companies which did not exist prior to the passage of this act. In addition, the Investment Promotion Act and a new incentives regime has been enacted to support the developments of key sectors in our economy. A new GIDC Act, known as the Grenada Investment Development Corporation Act, has replaced the former act, paving the way for this newly mandated Economic Development Corporation to take a lead role in giving Grenada's economy the competitive advantage while maintaining a transparent regime of incentives for all investors. These important reforms will go a long way towards improving our competitiveness and removing bottlenecks to growth and development. Implementation, once again, is critical to realizing the full benefits of these reforms. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the reforms are ongoing at the Inland Revenue Department and the Customs and Excise Divisions to improve the administration and collection of taxes, and this will be sustained. My government is pleased to report that we have seen significant improvement in tax collection as a result of the strengthened capacity at IRD, Inland Revenue Department, and Customs. Our aim is to continue to work towards a modern tax regime of fewer taxes, lower rates with a broader base, and greater voluntary compliance. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, on a whole, efforts to improve integrity in public service, especially in revenue collection agencies, remain a top priority. My government continues to applaud the honest and hard-working public officers whose integrity and professionalism are beyond reproach. In this vein, my government calls on those public servants who are not producing to step up and put in an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, while on the subject of public sector reform, my government remains cognizant of the critical role played by the public service in supporting government's agenda to improve the lives of ordinary Grenadians. In this regard, my government reiterates its commitment to reform the public service with the help and support of all key stakeholders to improve productivity and working conditions. My government has commenced dialogue with the trade unions on a wage bill management framework to ensure the sustainability of the wage bill going forward. This framework is expected to be completed within the first half of 2017. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government would like to place on record its appreciation to the trade unions for reaching agreement with government on the issue of the increments for the period 2014 to 2016 and going forward. We are now waiting to finalize the wage negotiations for 2017 to 2019. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government is convinced that agriculture is the bedrock of our economy. We have the potential to realize food and nutrition security for our people, while at the same time contributing significantly to health, employment, income, and foreign exchange. Going forward, the key priorities in this area will include implementation of the National Agriculture Plan 2030, continuing implementation of the Pradier-Larseney Strategy and Action Plan, supporting youth in agriculture, upgrading of farm machinery and equipment, supporting agribusiness development, and supporting investments in quality and phytosanitary standards to facilitate exports, among other critical interventions. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government reaffirms its commitment to make Grenada a world-class tourist destination. Growth in tourism continues to remain high and holds promise for further economic expansion and job creation. In this regard, my government will continue to focus its attention on expanding the room stock, on increasing tourist volume and spending through marketing, product development, and airlift support, especially intra-regionally. A key focus in 2017 will be the commercialization of several of our major tourism sites with a view to better management and enhanced visitor experience. Only recently, my government moved to install security personnel at different sites across the country so that visitors and citizens alike can feel even safer. Through the Citizens by Investment program, my government will continue to work towards the development of a portfolio of major private sector projects in the tourism sector. Already, we have seen the commencement on work on a number of major projects island-wide. Every parish will be positively impacted by the developments in the tourism sector. An outline of these projects will be given in my government's presentation of the 2017 budget. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, investment in infrastructure is critical to support private sector growth. In this regard, government will invest heavily in roads, bridges, rockfall, landslips, specialized equipment and machinery to support development across economic sectors such as agriculture, tourism, energy, and information communication technology, ICT. At every level, emphasis will be placed on making these investments climate resilient. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, in addition to the critical investments in education, health, tourism, agriculture, and other areas mentioned before, investments in these critical areas, such as energy and ICT, will be sustained. Cognizant that the employment needs of all citizens are many and varied, my government continues to invest in the Small Business Loan Program for the empowerment of our people. For the year 2016 so far, the Grenada Development Bank has recorded a number of loans that have resulted in significant job creation, as well as the preservation of existing jobs through this program. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, without a doubt, pension reform remains perhaps the most significant issue negatively affecting the public service. My government remains firmly committed to finding a collaborative and comprehensive solution to this problem. With this goal in mind, my government has begun the process of bringing this issue into resolution within an 18 to 24-month period. The first step taken was to seek independent technical advice from the Caribbean Regional Technical Assistance Center, CARTAC. The CARTAC report, which was shared with the public sector unions, is a starting point that has helped us define the problem and outline possible interventions to resolve the issue. Since receiving the CARTAC's report, my government has developed a detailed proposal for a collaborative roadmap, inclusive of a time-bound task force made up of representatives of all public sector unions and the government, and with the appropriate technical support from the National Insurance Scheme and other entities. My government has shared the roadmap with the public sector unions and is awaiting their early response to start work. We wish to assure the nation that we will continue to press ahead to address this burning issue in the shortest possible time. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, work continues on the National Sustainable Development Plan 2030. As we have said before, the plan is intended to reflect the dreams, aspirations, and hopes of all Grenadians at home and abroad, especially our youth. It will take into account global mandates such as the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the United Nations. Above all, it will be designed by Grenadians for Grenadians. The likely benefits include a clear sense of direction, faster development and employment creation, preservation of our heritage and environment, a heightened sense of spirituality, and citizens who are equipped to navigate our global world. We remain committed to the development and expect to have the plan finalized by the end of the third quarter of 2017. We remain convinced that this plan should transcend all narrow political interests. We implore all Grenadians to remain on board and take advantage of this unique opportunity to help shape the future of our country. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, another Thanksgiving holiday has come and gone. You would record the announcement that at the level of the social partners, it was proposed that the week of October 19th to the 25th be designated a week of remembrance. It was also proposed that the week be organized to better reflect the solemnity of this tragic period in our nation's history, the spectrum of the views across the nation, and the important lessons learned. It was further agreed that the Committee of Social Partners, led by the Conference of Churches, would propose ways and means for the observance of the week. Having considered the proposal, it was felt that further consultation with citizens was needed. Accordingly, we look towards next year to implement any changes to the status quo in respect of the Thanksgiving celebration. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, in the area of safety and security of our citizens and visitors alike, my government will continue to invest heavily to support the work of the Royal Grenada Police Force. It is imperative for us to maintain Grenada's long-standing image as a safe and secure place to live and visit. My government is cognizant of the rapidly changing nature of criminal activities and the significant challenges that crime poses to our sustainable development. In this regard, my government is committed to adequately equipping and training the Royal Grenada Police Force to face these challenges head-on thereby maintaining peace and order in our country. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, Grenada was recently invited to assume this chairmanship of the Small States Forum, a grouping of 49 small countries across the world, on the basis of our leadership in advocating small states issues such as graduation from official development assistance and securing resources to fight climate change. This prestigious appointment will see Grenada at the helm for the next 2 years, driving the agenda on these critical issues. My government notes with pleasure the increased recognition of the vulnerabilities of small states by international financing organizations such as the World Bank, and looks forward to receiving augmented donor support to help our countries build resilience, address inherent vulnerabilities, and break the low growth, high debt, and limited fiscal space spiral affecting our economies. My government remains committed to building strong families, by extension, strong communities, and a strong nation. We are committed to our philosophy that no one should be left behind. My government will continue to support the National Parenting Program. With the assistance of the World Bank, my government has completed the reform of its flagship social assistance program, Support for Education, Empowerment and Development, SEED, a new management information system, and a proxy means testing system or targeting tools are now in place. Accordingly, all beneficiaries, existing and potential, will be screened to ensure that only those who are deserving receive the benefit. My government is also pleased to report that it has not only maintained the level of benefits on social safety nets during the life of the Structural Adjustment Program, but has also expanded it as necessary. My government is also pleased to report that the Grand Bacolet Youth Rehabilitation and Treatment Center was opened earlier this year and is fully operational. In light of government's initiative in this area, the Caribbean Development Bank and other governments and international agencies have pledged financial and technical assistance to my government to further support our goals of providing young offenders with a second chance to make a positive contribution to society. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, in our interactions with our citizens, the issue of housing needs continues to be featured prominently. My government will expand its support to meet the considerable unmet housing demands of our citizens. Already, all major housing programs, including the house repair and soft loan scheme, have been expanded. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government reaffirms its commitment to strengthening our democracy. The Integrity Commission continues to work to ensure integrity in public life. The recently held conference entitled Visionary Leadership in the Management of Anti-Corruption has been hailed as a tremendous success. We expect to continue to see the tangible benefits of this noble venture. The Office of the Ombudsman continues to be a hallmark of our mantle for good governance and accountability within the system by remaining true to its mandate of addressing public complaints against the state by citizens. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, we have moved one step closer to having a key symbol of democracy restored, the Parliament building. Construction is well underway and should be completed by the end of November 2017. We thank the foreign governments who have helped us on this journey of restoration. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government continues to remain committed to the rebuilding of the Governor's General residence. Another approach has been made to friendly governments and international agencies to help fund this important historical landmark. Strengthening national unity. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, one of the greatest achievements of our country is the social partnership framework that was established in 2014. The spirit of patriotism and working together for Grenada has allowed us to embark on several fundamental and far-reaching reforms. In my government's view, that partnership has been critical to the success of the homegrown structural adjustment program. Uniting the people of Grenada at home and abroad will therefore remain a high priority of my government. My government has already agreed in principle to the continuation and strengthening of this important framework to include the youth and other key stakeholders in the decision-making process of our country. Conclusion. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, our economy is stable and growing, and our citizens are beginning to feel the positive effects of this stable growth. The results that we have achieved together in recent years are tremendous, but significant challenges remain. It is imperative that we consolidate these gains and continue to work even closer together to achieve much more. My government has reaffirmed its major priorities for this Parliament, building on the strong foundation of the recent past by investing better and smarter to achieve strong, sustainable and inclusive growth, creating jobs and investment opportunities for our people, and strengthening national unity. The details will be expounded when my government presents the 2017 budget on December the 9th, 2016. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, may God guide you in all your deliberations and render you equal to the sacred trust bestowed upon you. May God bless Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I stand to move the following motion in my name. Be it resolved that the Honourable Houses of Parliament record their thanks for the gracious address delivered today to the Houses by the Governor-General. Be it further resolved that debate on this address be deferred to a date to be named.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second the motion moved by the Prime Minister.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the Senate would like to associate itself with the motion moved by the Prime Minister.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second the motion and indeed to associate the Senate the sentiments of the motion. I thank you.
Honorable members of the Houses of Parliament, the question is that may it be resolved that the Honorable Houses of Parliament record their thanks for the gracious address delivered to the Houses by the Governor-General, and that it be further resolved that debate on the address be deferred to a date to be fixed. Honorable members of the Senate, those of you who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Honorable members of the House of Representatives, the question is that be it resolved that the debate on the address delivered by the Governor-General be deferred to a date to be mentioned. Honorable members of the House of Representatives, those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Honorable members, this House now adjourns.
Honorable members of the House of Representatives, this Honorable House now stands adjourned.
Excellent.